Welcome to a journey of transformation. Every week, we explore new horizons, pushing boundaries and embracing what's next. This isn't just about technology, it's about evolving ourselves. Think of it as your weekly reset, a chance to upgrade your mindset, your skills, and your potential. We're here to help you rethink how you approach challenges, how you innovate, and ultimately, how you succeed. From powerful insights to practical strategies and game-changing knowledge, we tap into everything you need. It's about staying ahead, not just in a digital world, but in life itself, equipping you for every new beginning. Because in this fast-paced era, standing still is simply not an option. Growth is continuous. You either choose to evolve, to adapt, and to learn, or you risk being left behind. Embrace the change. This isn't just an update. It's a profound rebirth, a chance to redefine your future, to step into your power, and to truly thrive. It's about unlocking your next level. Join us on this exciting path. Embrace your new beginning. Your journey starts now.
Welcome to Tuesday night's edition of the Final Boss Podcast. It is Tech Tuesday. And listen, the Sensei is away on business. He's on travel. So tonight, I'm solo, and we're going to get it in. Let's go. All right? So, Tech Tuesday, man. Episode number 242, man, as we approach the mid-season with episode 250, which is around the corner. It'll be here before you know it, right? And then from 250 to 300, man, 300. We're going to episode 300 for season 5. That would be the harvest, man. Season 5, the harvest is on its way. I'm excited about it, man. We have a lot of things that are going to be debuting for season 5, the harvest, which is around the corner, right? So before we get started, as always, the greeting of the day, right? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night to each and every last single one of you, no matter where you're watching from. And as always, this is for entertainment purposes only. This is for entertainment purposes only, right? Look, all seriousness, man, we got a great show for you, man. All seriousness. We have a great show for you tonight for Tuesday. It's not often I get a chance to do Tech Tuesdays solo. So when I do, is either we're going to do a rebroadcast, but I said, you know what, let me dive in to some topics that are affecting tech today. So I did a little bit of research and I came up with a great topic, man. Something that you guys probably aren't even tracking, but I am tracking it. We are tracking it here on Tech Tuesday, as we always do, for the most difficult of conversations, right? And no matter where you're watching from, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitch, Kick, YouTube, StreamYard, right? Spotify, and wherever else, we're out there, right? We're out there. So let's go ahead and get rid of the banners before we get into tonight's show. As always, make sure you go get All Aboard the Fired Up Train. Go time, All Aboard the Fired Up Train, Amazon bestseller. Please go pick it up, right? Go pick it up. And while you're watching this, like, share, and subscribe before you get into it, man. Like, share, subscribe. Three. Less than a second to do all three. Like, share, subscribe, right? So tonight, we're going to be talking about something that's called Project Glasswing. Project Glasswing, right? This is season 4, the rebirth, Arc 4, the construction. We left out of Arc 3 last week. Arc 3 was the, what was Arc 3? Well, anyway, it's not at the top of my mind right now. So we're going to just go ahead and continue, right? Arc 4, the construction. And tonight, we're going to be talking about Project Glasswing and what it's about. So, before we get started, man, that's some good stuff right there. Look, 12 of the most powerful names on the planet just signed a defense treaty. and your name wasn't on the list. Wonder why, right? Tonight we read the map. We find the unguarded gates and build the fortress they didn't see coming, right? But before we get into that, tonight's brass tacks. And tonight's brass tacks is this. When the kingdoms form an alliance and leave your name off the scroll, you don't beg for a seat. You build a fortress they have to negotiate with, right? And that's tonight's brass tacks. So, to my final boss, to my smarts, to my motivators, to my warriors, man, this is Tech Tuesday, episode 242. If you're just not joining us, we're live each and every Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern time. Like I said before, this is season 4, the rebirth and art for the construction. The Sensei is away on business tonight, which means the seat is mine and I control the tempo, right? And here's the news that did not get the airtime it deserved, right? Because on April 7th, 2026, Anthropic announced a coalition called Project Glasswing. 12 of the most influential entities in technology, finance, and open source software signed on to a single defense pact. AWS, Apple, Broadcom, Cisco, CrowdStrike, Google, JPMorgan Chase, Linux, Microsoft, Nvidia, Palo Alto, all came together under this project, right? And Anthropic was the head of the table. Plus, over 40 additional organizations granted access to the same weapon, right? 12 thrones, 1 treaty, 1 AI model on the table, and your name was not on the scroll. And I want every final boss out there running a small shop to hear me cleanly, right? The biggest cyber alliance in the history of the internet just formed, and private and press cycle gave it 48 hours of attention before moving on to whatever celebrity launched a new perfume, right? That tells you everything. The kingdoms that are made a move in the field didn't even look up, right? I looked up, right? So that matters, right? Because as a service-disabled, veteran-owned cybersecurity firm, Saturn Digital Networks Development Corp., we aren't at the table, right? And neither are the 99% of you, right? And 99% of the cyber companies that are on this planet. Not your IT shop, not your local managed service provider, right? Not your federal contractor who handles your country's water system and school district's emails, right? 12 thrones. The rest of us standing in the courtyard, right? Twisting up, playing with our fingers. And that's the layout. But this episode is not a complaint. This episode is a map, because when the kingdoms form an alliance and lock the gates, the smart move is not to beg for entry. The smart move is to read the terrain they left exposed, identify the citadels that they cannot defend, and build a fortress in an unguarded territory that they might have overlooked. Tonight, I'm going to walk through what Project Glasswing actually is, what the weapon is at the center of it, and what it actually does. Who's in the room and who got left out? How the treaty changed the cyber game for every smarts running operations, every motivator building a brand, every warrior protecting their family's digital lives, and every final boss running a company that depends on software written by someone they've never met, right? This is the construction, not the construction of the alliance, not the construction of their alliance, the construction of yours, right? So, let me give you the facts before we dive in. Let's talk about Project Glasswing, right? It's a coordinated cybersecurity initiative announced and funded by Anthropic. The official launch date was April 7, 2026. The stated mission is straightforward. Use a single frontier AI model to find and patch critical vulnerabilities in the world's most important software before adversaries can exploit it. The name comes from the glasswing butterfly, right? Greta onto, right? It's a insect with transparent wings. Anthropic chose the metaphor for two reasons. One, the vulnerabilities they're hunting are like the butterfly's wings, hidden in plain sight inside code that millions of engineers have already viewed and missed. Two, the transparency they claim to bring to the disclosure process, right? Showing the work in public rather than hoarding it inside a single company's vote. The funding numbers. Anthropic committed to 100 million in model usage credits to cover this partner access, plus an additional 4 million in direct donations to open source security organizations. That's 104 million in non-recoverable spend, right? On a project that produces no direct revenue. That's not philanthropy, that's positioning. The model pricing for those who do pay. 25 million input tokens, 125 million per output tokens. That's roughly 6 times the cost of standard frontier model pricing. The math tells you exactly who can afford to participate at scale. The kingdoms, not the courtyard, right? The access channels for Project Glasswing and its partners can use the model via Anthropic and API directly, via Amazon Bedrock, via Google Cloud, Vertex, right? And its AI, and Microsoft Foundry. 4 cloud entry points, 3 of which belong to companies inside the consortium. The infrastructure layer is locked in with the same names that signed the treaty. Smarts, I need you guys to pay attention. I need you to pay attention to the last thing I said, right? The cloud providers are the partners. The defense AI runs on infrastructure owned by the same companies whose code bases are being defended. That is vertical integration of cybersecurity at a level the industry has never seen before. AWS scanning, AWS code using a model running on AWS hardware. Microsoft scanning, Microsoft code using a model running on Microsoft Foundry. Same company, 3 rows, 1 defense posture. The deliverable timeline, right? The deliverable timeline comes from Anthropic, right? And they're committed to publishing a public report within 90 days of launch. That puts the first formal disclosure at early July 2026. So we're 30 days out from that particular drop, right? And when it lands, you're going to hear me break it down and right here on this show, right? And bookmark it, right? Because the participation model, the invite only, the vetted partners, the audit logs of every interaction with this model, right, has no public self-serve access, no general release that is planned. Anthropic has been clear that the Mythos preview is too dangerous to ship to the open market, right? Now, too dangerous. Think about it. Too dangerous to ship. They build it, they use it, and the 12 thrones use it also, right? Nobody else gets to touch it. The construction of a tool that exists for a closed club is the headline. The treaty around it is the structure. Final bosses, that's the deal. Now, let's look at the weapon. Right? The model at the center of the Project Glasswing is called Claude Mythos Preview, right? Some sources call it Mythos 2. It is a frontier AI system developed by Anthropic that they describe as their capable model of coding and agentic task, period, full stop, right? What does that mean in plain English, you ask? It means that Mythos can read code bases the way a senior software engineer reads code bases, right? It can spot logic errors. It can identify memory corruption patterns. It can chain multiple weaknesses together into a working exploit chain without a human ever touching a keyboard. Anthropic has assessed its skills and its skill level as comparable to a senior security researcher. Now, here what the model has actually done already, right? Mythos Preview autonomously discovered a 27-year-old vulnerability inside of OpenBSD. 27 years. That bug had survived nearly 3 decades of human review by some of the most paranoid security engineers in the open source world, right? Mythos found it. It also found a 16-year-old flaw inside of MPEG, right? The multimedia framework that runs inside of damn near every video app and streaming service that we use. That bug had been executed by automated testing tools over 5 million times without detection. Mythos also found it in its review, right? 27 years, 16 years, 5 million missed test executions. That is not a marketing claim, right? That is a body count of vulnerabilities that were hidden inside software that the entire planet runs on, right? Now, here's the hard truth. The same model that can find those flaws can also build the exploits for those flaws. Anthropic ran their own internal red team test on Mythos and confirmed that the model is capable of autonomous vulnerability, discovery, right? Exploit development, and change system compromise. In plain English, Mythos off the leash with the wrong instructions can hack the system it just defended. That's the dual use problem. And everything has a dual or tri use, right? The same blade that protects can attack. Anthropic looked at Mythos, saw the offensive capabilities, and made the call. No public release, at least not now, right? And not in this form, but maybe not ever, right? But instead, they built Glasswing to put the blade in the hands of trusted defenders first, right? And we know about those trusted defenders, right? We know about that. To my warriors, you understand this very principle, right? And you understand it better than anyone in the audience, right? Or in the chat. A weapon is not good or evil. The discipline of the hands holding it is the only variable that matters. Anthropic chose to hand the blade to 12 sets of hands that they trust. 40 more pairs of vetted hands after that. The rest of us get nothing, right? And here's where the philosophical question becomes a tactical question, right? If Mythos exists, somebody else is building a Mythos clone. OpenAI is building one. Google has one. Meta is building one. You best believe the Chinese state actors are building one as well. And possibly the North Korean intelligence services are already field testing, probably, right? The race is not whether AI cyber capability proliferates. The race is whether the defenders are ready when the offense lands, right? That is the construction Anthropic chose. But the defense first, right? Force the safeguards into the model. Then maybe ship a sanitized version downstream to the rest of the world. The next public Claude Opus model is reportedly going to inherit every hardening lesson learned during Glasswing, right? So Mythos is the weapon. The treaty is the alliance. And now, look, let me show you why the timing of this is not by accident, right? Let me show you this. Because Anthropic did not wake up in the morning on April 7th and decide to build a cyber alliance for fun. They did it because the treaty landscape changed faster than the defense posture could absorb. Now, let me hit you with this, right? I got 3 numbers, and these are going to tell you exactly what they mean, right? Number 1, time to exploit. That's the gap between when a vulnerability gets publicly disclosed and when attackers have a working exploit that's in the wild. In 2020, the gap was over 700 days, almost 2 years. Defenders had time to patch, time to test, time to roll out fixes, and they did it carefully, right? And in 2025, the number dropped to 44 days, less than 2 months. And according to the Mandiant M-Trends 2026 report, the number has now effectively gone negative. Negative. Think about that. Sit with that, right? Exploits are arriving in the wild before the patch ships. 28.3% of disclosed CVEs are now exploited within 24 hours of disclosure. And to my smarts, I need you to sit with this, right? I need you to see the patch cycle is dead. The patch cycle, to my IT people, you know what that is, right? The traditional model of disclose, patch, deploy, defend has collapsed because the offense moves faster than the defense can write the fix. And then number two, the malicious package growth. The number of malicious software packages identified in public code repositories went from 55,000 in 2022 to 454,000 in 2025. That's an 8-fold increase in 3 years. The vector is open source supply chain attacks, right? Attackers slip poison packages into the dependency trees that legitimate developers pull into their projects. Your business app depends on libraries. Those libraries depend on other libraries. 6 layers down the chain, there is now a meaningful probability that something is compromised, right? And then number 3, a single actor attack at scale. In July 2025, one individual using an agentic AI coding system ran a coordinated extortion campaign against 17 organizations in a single month. The AI wrote the malware, organized stolen files, analyzed financial records to collaborate ransom demands, and drafted the extortion emails. In December 2025, another single individual used a combination of AI tools to breach over 10 Mexican government agencies and steal 195 million taxpayer records. One person, hundreds of millions of records. This is what the battlefield looks like in 2026. The attackers used to need teams, right? Now they need a laptop and a prompt. The defenders used to have time. Now they have minutes. And to my motivators, I need you to listen up, right? This is why Anthropic moved. They saw what their own model could do in the wrong hands, and they refused to wait for the market to catch up. They built Glasswing because their alternative is watching the most powerful cyber weapon in history leak into the hands of anyone with a credit card and bad intent, right? And to my final bosses who are running businesses right now, I need you guys to hear me, right? Your existing security stack was built for old battlefield. The firewall, the antivirus, the endpoint detection, the patch management cycle, all of it, right? Built for a world where the offense moves slower than the defense. That world is gone. The architecture has to be rebuilt from the ground up for an AI accelerated threat environment. This is the construction, right? Not metaphorically, literally, right? The old buildings cannot stand against the new weapons. The fortresses have to be rebuilt with different materials, different walls, different centuries, right? Anthropic just built the first fortress and locked 12 allies inside. Now, let me show you exactly who they let in, right? The 12 thrones. The 12 thrones, right? I'm going to give you the names because the alliance map tells the story, right? And you could you could travel the map if you know, if you can see it, right? And there's throne 1. Anthropic, convener, founder, and funder, the AI lab that built the weapons and called the meeting, that is their treaty, their rules, their disclosed protocol. Throne 2, AWS, the largest cloud infrastructure provider on earth. AWS processes over 400 million network flows per day. That number is not a typo. 400 trillion. AWS sits in the treaty because if their infrastructure goes down, a meaningful portion of the global internet stops working. Throne 3, Apple. Apple owns the most valuable consumer hardware ecosystem on the planet. And that's iPhone, iPad, Mac, Watch OS, Apple Silicon, the App Store, and every Apple device that has a potential attack surface, right? Every line of Apple code is critical infrastructure. And then there's Throne 4, Broadcom, right? The hardware acquisition giant that now owns VMware, right? If you run a virtualized data center, Broadcom touches your stack. Network chips, server visualizations, mainframe software, the plumbing layer of the enterprise world. And then there's Throne 5, Cisco, the networking backbone, the routers, switches, firewalls, identity infrastructure, the pipes that pipes through everything the internet runs on, right? And then there's Throne 6, CrowdStrike, the endpoint detection and response giant, Falcon platform deployed on millions of corporate endpoints worldwide, the eyes inside the perimeter. And then there's Throne 7, right? Google, the cloud, the browser, the operating system on most phones, the search index, the email layer for half the workforce, critical infrastructure category, and everything else all above, right? And then there's Throne 8, JPMorgan Chase, the largest bank in the United States. The treaty includes financial infrastructure because of a successful AI-driven attack on the banking system is now within the realm of plausible threat modeling. JPMorgan Chase is sitting at the table, and that signal is that the financial sector is treating this as a 5-alarm fire, right? And then Throne 9, right? The Linux Foundation. This is the strength power play. The Linux Foundation maintains the kernel that runs most of the internet servers, every Android phone, most embedded devices, and the majority of cloud workloads. Putting open source maintainers in the treaty is how you protect the supply chain without trying to buy every dependency in existence. And then there's Throne 10, Microsoft Windows, Azure, right? Office, GitHub, Visual Studio, Xbox. Microsoft owns more than critical software surface area that any company in history except possibly Apple, right? Microsoft also runs M-Dash, their own AI-driven defense scanning system, which I'll touch on in a moment, right? Give me a second. Let me go to a quick commercial break. All right, we're back. Sorry about that. Oh, where was I? Throne 11, Palo Alto Networks, right? The premier network security vendor. It's the next generation of firewalls, cloud security platforms, threat intelligence operations, and the professional defenders of the enterprise perimeter, right? And lastly, Throne 12. Each one represents the layer of the cyber stack: hardware, cloud, network, operating systems, application, endpoint, identity, open source, finance, silicon, and defense labor, or defense vendor, I should say, AI lab, right? The treaty is not random, it is architectural. Every layer of the modern cyber stack has a representative in the room. That is by design. Anthropic did not just gather influential companies, it mapped the kill chain and seated one defender at every position. The fortress they built has 12 walls, each wall manned by a different kingdom: smarts, That's the layout, right? That's the layout. Now, of the 12 thrones, one deserves its own segment because it changes the math for everyone in the courtyard. The Linux Foundation seat. Let's talk about it, right? Why does this matter to the final bosses who runs a marketing agency? Why does it matter to a motivator who runs a coaching business out of their home? Why does this matter to a warrior who handles their family's digital security on a laptop? I'm going to tell you, and here's why, right? Because open source software is the solid infrastructure under almost every digital product you touch. Your email client uses open source libraries. Your business CRM uses open source libraries. The website hosting your podcast uses open source libraries. The mobile app on your phone uses open source libraries. The car that you drive uses open source libraries, right? The hospital that holds your medical records use open source libraries, right? Some studies put the number at 96% of modern commercial software, and that contains at least one open source component. Most software is not 96% open source by code volume, but by component dependency. The open source layer is functionally everywhere. If something poisons the open source supply chain, that poison flows downstream into thousands of products simultaneously, right? The traditional model of open source security relied on voluntary maintainers, right? Brilliant, dedicated, often unpaid people who personally reviewed code submissions to widely used libraries. The XZ utils, right, or utils backdoor incident in 2024 showed exactly what happens when an attacker spends 2 years infiltrating an open source project by impersonating a legitimate volunteer contributor. That incident nearly compromised every Linux server on Earth before a Microsoft engineer caught the anomaly by accident, right? 2 years. 2 years of social engineering. One backdoor away from a planetary scale compromise. That was 2024. Now, the attackers have AI, right? And Project Glasswing brings the Linux Foundation into the treaty specifically because the open source supply chain is the soft underbelly of the entire internet. If Mythos Preview can autonomously scan critical open source code bases and identify vulnerabilities before adversarial AI can exploit them, then the entire downstream ecosystem of commercial software benefits without ever paying a dollar. Every commercial product that depends on open source benefits if the open source layer gets hardened. Your CRM, your email, your hosting, your mobile app, your medical records, your cars, your hospitals, the schools, all of it, right? The bet Anthropic placed by including the Linux Foundations is the defensive AI applied to upstream open source generates compounding security returns across every downstream commercial product. It is the highest leverage move in the entire treaty, right? And for my smarts watching this, listen, guys, here's your action item, right? Track the public reports that came out of Glasswing within the next 90 days. The first one drops by nearly early as July 2026. Watch which open source projects get hardened. Map those projects to your own dependency tree. Adjust those security postures accordingly, right? And to my final bosses, look, here's your strategic read. The supply chain has always been the cheapest way to attack a target. Glasswing is the first real attempt to harden the supply chain at the source. If it works, your business gets a tailwind. If it fails, your business gets a headwind that no firewall is going to stop. The Linux Foundation seat is the move that turns Glasswing from an enterprise security project into a planetary scale defensive initiative. That single decision is why I'm taking the time tonight to unpack it in depth, right? The fortress they built has 12 walls. The wall facing the upstream supply chain is the most important one of them all, right? Now, let's talk about the money, right? Because the price of entry tells you who the treaty is really for. Claude Mythos preview costs 25 million, right? In input tokens, 125 million in output tokens. That pricing is roughly 6 times the cost of standard frontier model access. And by comparison, a typical commercial AI workflow at scale might burn through hundreds of billions of tokens in a single defensive scan of a major code base, right? Now let's do the math. Let's do the math out loud. Imagine, right? Imagine you're a mid-sized cybersecurity firm and you want to use Mythos Preview to scan your client's enterprise code base by looking for vulnerabilities. A modest scan workload might consume 50 million input tokens and 10 million output tokens, right? Roughly per pass, right? At Mythos pricing, that's 1,250 in input plus $1,250 in output. $2,500 for one scan for one client code base. Now let's scale that up, right? You own or have a large enterprise code base that requires multiple passes, multiple modules, ongoing monitoring, regression testing. You're looking at anywhere between $50,000 to $250,000 per quarter for a single client at full deployment. For a small managed security service provider, that's the entire annual revenue from a mid-market account just to cover the model costs, right? Now, here's the part that the press didn't talk about. They didn't cover this, right? Anthropic committed 100 million in usage credits to cover Project Glasswing's partners. That's 100 million, right? That's a big deal. Partners do not pay retail. Partners burn credit, right? The math that crushes a courtyard player is irrelevant to the kingdom, right? That is what economists call a moat, right? The kingdoms get the weapon for free because they get invited to the table. The courtyard pays the sticker price if they can get access to it all, right? Most cannot, believe it or not, right? And to my motivators, this is the part I want you to internalize, right? I want you to internalize this and sit with it, right? Every game has a pricing structure that reveals who the game is built for. The pricing structure of Mythos Preview tells you Glasswing is built for the giants. The 40 additional vetted organizations who got access were carefully selected for their critical infrastructure roles. They are not selling Mythos as a service to the open market, right? Final bosses running cyber firms, listen, or who are planning to enter the cyberspace, here's the playbook, right? Forget about competing on the same primitive as Glasswing, right? You cannot win on an AI scale vulnerability scanning when the kingdoms have free access to a model you cannot afford. The game is locked. You need to pick a different game, right? The different game looks like this: implementation services, integration consulting, training, compliance frameworks, sector-specific defensive playbooks. The kingdoms have the weapon. The courtyard has the labor. The kingdom cannot scale human expertise. The courtyard cannot scale silicone. The trade is obvious, right? And to my warriors who are guarding small organizations or family digital footprints, look, your move is different. You're not going to buy access to Mythos, right? You're going to benefit from the downstream hardening that comes when the kingdom scan open source and ship better software. Your job is to keep your systems current, your auth strong, your backups fresh, and your humans trained. The treaty does not protect you. The treaty's downstream effects on the software you already use is what protects you. Eat the upgrade cycle when it comes, right? Because the price of entry tells you the game. The game tells you the position tells you the move, and that's how strategy works, right? Now, I'm going to do something now that nobody else in the cyber podcast space is going to do, and I'm going to do it tonight, right? I'm going to tell you what it looks like from the outside of that treaty, right? SDNDC, service disabled veteran owned small business, cybersecurity work, right? In multiple sectors. We are not in the Glasswing consortium. And we never will be, most likely, right? The consortium is not built for companies our size. The economic gravity of 100 million in credits flows towards the giants and pulls oxygen out of the small business cyber ecosystem, right? And that's not a complaint, people. That's the market analysis. And let me give it to you straight. Position one, as a veteran-owned small business, SDVS, VOSB, right? And any of those who are 8A, women-owned, hub zone, the whole socioeconomic small business cyber sector. This sector wins federal contracts on set-asides, right? Federal agencies value the diversity of supplier base. The Glasswing announcement does not change federal contracting law. The set-asides remain. The competitive landscape inside that set-aside lane remains, right? The federal cyber spend continues to flow. What changes in the expectation of is the capabilities, right? Federal agencies are going to start asking small businesses and small business vendors or cyber vendors how their offerings interact with AI accelerated threats. The vendors who have an answer win. The vendors who say we'll patch faster lose. Position number two, regional managed security service providers. These are the firms that serve small and mid-sized businesses in specific geographies, right? They run security operation centers. They manage firewalls. They handle endpoint protection for clients who cannot afford in-house security teams. Glasswing does not change their revenue model directly. Glasswing changes what their clients are exposed to. The smart MSSPs are going to retool their playbooks now and reposition as the human implementation layer that translates Glasswing downstream improvements into client outcomes, right? Position three, independent security consultants, right? Solo operators, small partnerships, niche specialists, right? The brutal truth here, pure play vulnerability scanning as a service is now a commodity price game, and the commodity supplier is going to be the one of the 12 thrones offering it as a cloud service. Independent consultants who survive will reposition into compliance work, incident response, security strategy, training, and human-centric services that AI cannot replace. Position four, security and cyber startups who are not in the consortium, right? The hardest position on the field, you have to either get acquired, get aligned with a partner inside a consortium, or pick a vertical that the giants do not care about. They are not about 20, they're about 20,000 cybersecurity vendors on the planet right now. The number is going to compress significantly over the next 36 months. The survivors will be the ones who understood the treaty early and reposition. And then there's position five. Every final boss running a non-security business. You, my friend, are a customer. Your job is to ask better questions to your vendors. Ask them how their software dependencies are protected. Ask them whether they participate in vulnerability disclosure program. Ask them when they last had an AI-assisted code review. The questions you ask shape the market the vendors build, right? This is the outside, right? And we are not at the table. The table exists. The table is real. The treaty is real. The economics flow toward the kingdoms, the opportunities for the courtyard, and the implementation layer, the human layer, the niche layer, and the relationship layer. The fortress you build outside, because we're outside, and that treaty looks different from the fortress they built inside. It's time to build the right kind, right? And we can build it now. We can build it now, right? Now I want to put the a discussion, right, on Anthropic, right? Because this is the part of the Glasswing story that the consumer press totally missed, right? Because Anthropic has confirmed in public materials that they have been in ongoing discussions with United States government officials about Mythos' preview offensive and defensive cyber capabilities, right? Did you hear what I just said? We're talking about diplomatic language, right? Now let me translate it for you. A frontier AI model that can autonomously identify and exploit zero-day vulnerabilities in critical infrastructure is, by every existing legal definition, a dual-use technology with potential national security implications. The federal government does not let a tool like that exist in the wild without conversations at agency level. CISA, NSA, FBI, Cyber Division, and the Department of Defense, the intelligence community, all a part of the ecosystem that's looking at Mythos right now and asking what their stake in it should be. The current administration, Cyber Strategy for America, released in mid-March 2026, named 6 policy pillars. One of those pillars is maintaining superiority in emerging technologies. Project Glasswing fits inside that pillar like a glove. A frontier American AI model deployed defensively across critical American infrastructure by a coalition of mostly American companies is a textbook implementation of that very strategy, right? Warriors, you know the structure. When private sector capability aligns with public sector strategy, you get a public-private partnership that operates above the standard procurement channel. The official contracts come later. The relationships come first. Glasswing is positioning Anthropic and its partners for generational role in the federal cyber doctrine, right? And here's what that means tactically for the federal contracting space. Small business cyber vendors who serve federal clients are going to see new compliance requirements emerge over the next 12 to 18 months. Requirements that map to standards like Glasswing is going to help define that. The vendors who track Glasswing publicly disclose findings closely and align their service offerings to the standards as they emerge are going to win. The vendors who wait to read the regulation when it lands will likely lose, right? And for my final bosses who are running federal contracts, the action item is clear. Add Glasswing tracking to your competitive intelligence function right now. Assign someone on your team to read every public disclosure that comes out of that project. Build internal playbooks that anticipate the regulatory and contracting shifts that will follow. And for my smarts, watching the geopolitical political layer, understand this very thing, right? The treaty is not just a defense pact. It is a self-assertion of American technological sovereignty in the cyber AI domain. China has its own equivalent and it's forming, right? Although less public, the European Union is racing to keep up. Anthropic put a stake in the ground for a particular vision. That vision of how frontier AI should be deployed for cyber defense. That stack will shape internal and international norms, right? This is one of the moments where federal IT, commercial cyber, frontier AI, and geopolitical strategies collide in a single initiative. The treaty is national security architecture wearing civilian clothes. That move right there, those moves that you make will be different from the moves you make if you wait and watch it from the press release, right? The kingdoms know. The government knows. And now you know. Right? Now, let me talk about this for a second. Let me slow down for a second, right? And I want to walk you through the philosophical pivot in the heart of this whole thing, right? Because this is where most people miss this entire idea, right? Anthropic built a model that can attack as well as defend. Same model, same code, same neural network. The difference between a Mythos session that hardens a system and a Mythos session that breaks a system is the prompt, the intent of the operator, the legal scope of the engagement. Same blade, different hand, different targets, different outcome. This is the dual use problem that has haunted every powerful technology in human history. The hammer that builds the house is the same hammer that breaks the window. The chemistry that makes fertilizer is the same chemistry that makes explosives. The nuclear physics that powers a city is the same nuclear physics that levels a city. We've been here before, and here we are again. And we will forever be here, right? Anthropic looked at Mythos and made a choice that will be studied in policy schools for the next 20 years. They chose to deploy the model first for defense. They built guardrails that restricted access. They built audit logs. They selected partners. They engaged the government. They funded open source security, and they paid for the credits. That choice cost them money in short term. A different AI lab could have just released Mythos publicly, charged 200 per million tokens, and made hundreds of millions in revenue in the first quarter. But Anthropic chose not to. And you're probably asking why, right? Because they believe the offensive proliferation is inevitable and the defensive head start is the only thing that matters. They believe other labs will build their own Mythos weapon first, learn how to use it, build the safeguards, and ship those safeguards into the next generation of more widely available models. That is a bet. And it might be right. It might be wrong. But the next 24 months will tell, right? So my smarts, here is what I tell you, and I need you to understand about the philosophical move, right? The same logic applies to every AI capability that emerges from this point forward. Image generation, voice cloning, autonomous agents, code generation, biological design. Each one of those capabilities is going to face the same fork in the road. Deploy with safeguards or deploy without. Each AI lab is going to have to choose to its own posture. The labs that choose the Glasswing posture are betting on responsible deployment. The labs that choose the open release posture are betting on rapid democratization, right? Both bets have intellectual merit. Both bets have real risk. We do not know, or I should say, we do not yet know which one produces better long-term outcomes for humanity, right? And my motivators, this is the part where I want you to recognize what kind of decisions matter. Anthropic made a decision that cost them short-term revenue and short-term market share. They made it because they believed it was the right move for the long-term posture of that technology. That, my friends, is leadership. And leadership is not just doing what is at hand or doing what is hard. Leadership is doing what is right when the right thing costs you something the wrong thing would have given you. Warriors, you know this principle to the bone. The decisions that cost you the most are the ones that built the legacy. The decisions that pay the most are the ones that leave you with nothing. Glasswing is Anthropic's bet on that legacy. The offense-defense paradox does not resolve. It only gets managed. Glasswing is one approach to managing it. Time will judge whether it is the right choice or not, right? Whether it's the right choice or not. Now, right? Think about that. Let's sit with that, man. Sit with that, right? Sit with all of that, because to my smarts, to my motivators, to my warriors, to my final bosses, I need you guys to understand something, right? They laid the map. This is the pathway, right? And to all of you, I want you to understand, you know what? Let me address my veterans, right? My warriors, my combat veterans, my first responders, and the folks who serve the country and now protect families with the same discipline they protected in their unit, right? Or in deployment. The folks who understand operational security in the bone because their lives depend on it. Look, the Glasswing Treaty is happening. The kingdoms are protecting the giant institutions and critical infrastructure and the open source supply chain that runs the world. None of that has anything to do with the laptop on your kitchen table or the phone that's in your pocket, or even a smart TV that's in your living room, right? Or your security cameras that are around your home. So what does the treaty mean for the warrior protecting a house or its household? Let me give it to you straight, right? Let me give it to you straight. Truth number one, the downstream effects of Glasswing are going to make the consumer software you use more secure over time. Your iPhone, your Android, your Windows laptop, your Chromebook, your Linux box, the browsers, the apps, the games your kids play, all of those products depend on libraries and frameworks that Glasswing is hardening. You take the updates, install the patches, reboot the system, tells you when it tells you to reboot. Stop pushing the update notification away for 3 weeks because you're too busy. The patch is the perimeter. The patch is the fortress wall. The patch is the discipline, right? And then there's truth number two. The threat against your household is not going to come through the unpatched library. The threat is going to come through human engineering, AI engineered phishing, voice cloning of family members in distress, deep fake video calls, romance scams that sound exactly like a real human. A technical layer is being defended by giants right now. The human layer is being attacked by adversaries who now have AI as their force multiplier. Train your family on verification protocols. Pick a household code word that gets used whenever someone calls claiming to be in distress or in distress. Establish a verification callback procedure. Treat unsolicited contact with suspicion that it deserves, right? That, my friends, is the fortress that you have to build under harder conditions than this right here, right? You have already protected what mattered when nobody else could. Apply the same discipline to the digital terrain. The principles do not change because the battlefield digitized. The principles never change, only the tactics that evolve, right? Now, let me bring this home. And we're about to close, right? We're going to talk about the 3 pillars, and then we're out, right? Pillar number one. The construction is real. 12 thrones formed an alliance. They have a weapon, and it's a weapon you cannot buy. They have $100 million in credits to use it. They have a coordinated disclosure protocol. They have the federal government in the room. They have the open source supply chain on the inside. They have 90% of the world's cloud hardware, network, endpoint, and identity layer covered by partners. They have started construction on the new cyber doctrine for the AI accelerated era. The construction is real, and it is happening whether you participate or not. And pillar number 2, your position determines your move. If you are inside the consortium, you are riding the wave. If you are in the implementation layer around the kingdoms, you are positioning. If you are running a small or mid-sized business, you are downstream, and your job is to adapt. If you're a household warrior protecting a family, you are protected indirectly by the downstream hardening and directly by your own discipline. Different positions, different moves, same battlefield, right? And then pillar number 3, The treaty did not end the war. The treaty changed the terms. The adversaries will retool. The offensive AI capability will proliferate to actors who will not honor any disclosure norms. The defenders inside Glasswing get a head start. Everyone else gets the spillover effect. The war, I should say, continues. The doctrine evolves. The discipline endures. Now, the brass tacks that I spoke of earlier, right? Here it is again. When the kingdoms form an alliance and leave your name off the scroll, you don't beg for a seat. You build a fortress they have to negotiate with. That fortress, for my smarts, is your technical fluency in the new doctrine. That fortress for my final bosses is your strategic position in the implementation layer. That fortress for the motivators is to trust your audience who has placed their trust in you and how you steward it, right? And the fortress for my warriors is the discipline you bring to every digital decision in your household, right? You aren't invited to the treaty. And you're not begging for an invitation. You are building the fortress they have to negotiate with, right? The rebirth is the season. The destruction is the arc. The doctrine is being written in real time. The treaty gets signed is one chapter. You are writing the next one with every decision you make this week. That's it. That's the episode. Tech Tuesdays 242, solo seat. Arc for the construction, live at 9 p.m. Tap in next Tuesday for Tech Tuesdays episode with the Sensei when he returns, right? And tap in tomorrow for Merger Wednesdays, number 23. The Earth is the spaceship, dropping at episode 249. That's next on the Doctrine track. And then tap in Thursday for Special Guest Thursdays, where we more than likely will have a town hall, right? And then tap in on SDS, Arc for the Construction, where the conversation continues to unfold. I am the Final Boss. This has been the Final Boss podcast. Stay sovereign, stay sharp, stay free, right? And to each and every last single one of you, make sure you don't gatekeep this information, right? Don't gatekeep this information. Share it to at least 3 people. Like, share, subscribe. And remember, there's a heavy pain that comes with discipline, but there's an even heavier pain that comes with regret. I am here. We are here. And as always, if I don't see you tomorrow, remember, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. That is our show, ladies and gentlemen. Be balanced, be equal, and be smart. Y'all have a good night. And I will see you again tomorrow night for Merger Wednesdays at 9 p.m. live. See you then. Take care.